Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the work session for the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin for November 1st, 2021. This evening, we have with us Gene Holloway from CERCAP and our Water Resources Director, Jamie Latcham, and we're going to review the water and wastewater analysis that was performed by CERCAP and hopefully have a very fruitful discussion. So with that being said, Gene, you can take us where we need to go.
Do you mind if I stand?
I don't mind at all. You can stand or sit, whichever you prefer.
I do so much training, I'm more comfortable.
Just, if you don't mind, before you begin, go ahead and explain what CERCAP is.
Okay. There's a slide on here about that. It
Okay.
stands for Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project. We are one of the Rural Community Assistance Partnership that covers 6 different regions, including us. We cover 7 states from Delaware down to Florida. And all 50 states and U.S. territories are covered by this partnership. We are a nonprofit. We receive federal monies. We receive some state monies from a variety of different sources. Our particular office covers Delaware and Maryland. Just some background on this. The original work, as some of you probably know, began in the summer of 2019. Made a presentation to the Mayor and Council in August of 2019, and then COVID struck. And it was thought, in discussion with Natalie and with Jeff, that there was no need to make any proposed rate changes during COVID because everything was so topsy-turvy. So we just kind of put everything in advance, and just about all the rate studies I had underway at the same time did the same thing. We began again towards the end of 2020 to look at the audited figures. Well, not the audited figures at that point, I didn't get them till later, but I did a second presentation for you all in December of 2020. And I updated it based on the audited figures that came in 2020 and got back down to brass tacks in early 2021. I've met with the management team several times to discuss the different findings and go over some of the things. Some of the basic principles you'll see in the written report, and this is just meant to be a summary of the written report, not to go into a lot of detail and to answer your questions if you have any. But the goal is always, with any enterprise fund, full cost recovery. No matter how you slice the pie, if your costs are represented by a pie, no matter how you slice the pie doesn't change. The size of the pie doesn't change. So there's a kind of an explanation of that on page 2. There's 3 things that I talked about to you all before that you should do before a rate change. You should get a handle on unaccounted for water, get a handle on collections, and I'm pleased to say your collections your rates are very good. Thank your clerical staff for that. And also to make sure that if you have a minimum bill with gallons included in it, that is at the optimum level. If it's too high, you end up giving away water. So there's some detailed explanation of that in the boilerplate part of the report, the first couple of pages. Reserves should be looked at as a cost of operation rather than as something that's just nice to have. Because if you put in a pump today, every day that pump is used, it's going to wear out just a little bit and it's going to need to be replaced down the road. And the people that are causing it to wear out are your current customers. So they should be paying maybe not the whole cost of replacing that pump 10 years from now or whatever, but they should be paying some prorated portion of that into a reserve to replace it, to make your system sustainable. And I've done this so much I can get ahead of my own slides here, so but the typical way to, the recommended way to structure rates is to have a fixed charge that covers your fixed costs. And the way I view fixed costs is not necessarily the way an accountant would view them. I look at debt service and reserves as a fixed cost. That's what you have to pay no matter whether you sell a gallon, whether you sell 1 million gallons or whatever. That's what I look at. And then your variable costs, up to and including salaries, electric bill, and all those kinds of things that vary with the volume sold, that should be covered by a volumetric charge. And I use, this is my, as you can see, well-thumbed copy. This is kind of the gold standard for rate setting is the AWWA manual, their M1. And I also use M54, which is for small systems. And even as big as Berlin is, it's still considered a small system under 10,000 population. So these, what I'm talking about is something that's very accepted in terms of fixed charge, volumetric charge, and so forth. So getting into your specifics, this is just a 6-year cross projection starting with the audited figures from 2020. The debt service, you don't have any in the water system right now, so that debt service and reserves, those are reserve figures that I have added. And I do that as a standard practice when I do rate studies. I can go into detail if you want to know what's included there, but it includes an emergency reserve, a repair and replacement reserve, and a debt service reserve, which of course right now you don't have any debt. But as you can see, the costs will go up. I use a 2 to 3% inflation on everything except health insurance and fuel. Some of them I might use 5%, but I usually use a higher percentage for health insurance and fuel in particular. But generally, your costs are going to go up. If you don't add a single connection, you don't lose a single connection, your costs are going to go up because the cost of everything goes up, whether it's a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. Where the money goes, this is a really good-looking pie here as far as utilities go because the bulk of your revenue goes directly to pay for operations. You're not top-heavy, you have no debt. That 9% represents the figures that I've added for reserves. 38% for personnel costs, and just over a third, but the vast majority of your money goes into, or your costs go into operations, which is as it should be. I did a projection based on the 2020 revenues of what revenues should be with the same rates of inflation over the 6-year period, well, 5 years plus FY 2020. And as you can see, there is a deficit. Your total revenues, not including that include your connection fees, your impact fees, for lack of a better term, might be enough, but your rate revenue is not enough to cover the cost of operation. So basically, the costs are exceeding the rate revenues significantly, and as time goes by, that gap only gets wider. The projected surplus, again, it grows over time, even without any additional debt.
Gene, if you don't mind me asking,
Yes.
Can you go back
Sure.
to the slide that shows the deficit?
There? Okay.
No, one more, please.
Okay.
One more.
Well, all right.
There we are. So where it's showing the FY 20 year 1 through 5 deficit, that is with the debt service and reserve factored in.
That is with the reserve, no debt service.
I thought that was the 9% that you...
9% is the reserves that I have put in, and I use different percentages for different things. It amounts to 9% of your revenues. 9% is not the figure that I use. And it is recommended, again, according to the Bible, to have at least 10 to 25% in reserve. So 9% is not unreasonable by any means.
So we'll start to see that once we factor in that amount to our rates.
You should, yes.
Right.
You should.
And we've been missing that currently, but the fund is not closing in the red.
But even if I took that out, you'd still be in the hole because your total revenues, the impact fees, and the things that are not supposed to go to pay for operations
Are
are being used to cover that gap.
Thank you.
So again, I'll just zip through this, and again, this isn't intended to be a detailed presentation, it's just, to give you, hit the highlights and assume that everybody can read the report at their leisure. The thing that I found very striking and the thing that concerns me most is the non-revenue water, the percentage of what you're producing that you're not getting paid for, that's not bringing in any revenue. Ideal, and again, according to this Bible here, the ideal is 10% of what you produce. 15%, in my view anyway, is acceptable, particularly for a large system, because some of it is inevitable. You have water in the pipe all the time. You have to backwash filters. You have usage that you don't pay for from the town buildings or what have you. Yours is more than 25%. 25% of your production for 2020 was 42,600,000 gallons. That's a lot of water. Now, some of that may be quote-unquote paper loss. It can be just differences in meter readings. It can be a lot of things. And some of it can be line loss and filter backwash and so forth. But at an average rate of $4.80 a thousand gallons, that equates to over $200,000 in revenue that you're not recovering.
Hey, Gene, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
When you refer to like this, when you say gallons for 2020, are we talking, I think this is in the report I saw, this is a calendar year, or are we doing all
Because
this?
that's the way it's reported,
Right, okay.
yes, yeah. But even though the fiscal year and the calendar year don't match, that was as close as I could get to an average year. And heaven knows 2020 wasn't average, but in
Just
terms
wanted to
of,
clear it up.
yeah, in terms of usage. And I know that this is not an actual figure, and in fact, even the figures that I gave you before are not actual figures other than 2020. They're projections and best estimates based on knowledge, experience, and stuff like this. And 480 per thousand, in reality, that's probably not accurate because where you have a tiered fixed charge with gallons included, it's hard to even quantify what it would be in actual dollars. So I just took an actual water use, actual water rate of 480 to estimate how much it was. Now, let's say some of that is line loss, some of that is filter backwash, etc. The likely culprit for the largest part of it is insufficient metering. Old meters that don't read from the first gallon, etc. If even half of that amount is actual gallons lost, you're looking at over $100,000. And if you'll refer back to the slide that showed the deficit, that $100,000 a year would cover your deficit and would just more than make up for it and contribute to your reserve that you don't have now. So that's a significant loss of water. If it's not gallons flowing out in the street, it's gallons you're not getting paid for and that are costing you to produce.
Could you elaborate on insufficient metering?
Well, first of all, and I'll let Jamie chime in too, first of all, your meters are old. They're older than 10 years. It's recommended that they be replaced every 10 years. I'm also told, and I'll let you explain in more detail, they don't register until you trip over 1,000 gallons. So 1 to 99 people are getting for nothing until it trips 1,000.
So I could use 999 and never be billed for 1,000.
Right. You'd get that minimum bill and that's all you get.
And then,
So you're using, that much, and that is the most likely culprit.
Yeah.
And my guess would be 75% of it.
Yeah.
And to put that in another perspective, if I were a manufacturer, I'm basically losing 25%, 1 quarter of my product before I start making any money. If that resonates more than, people don't think of water as a product a lot of times. They think of it as a service, and it is. But it's costing you to produce that product and to deliver that product.
and while we're talking about meters, Jamie and Natalie can both elaborate on some of the meters that were not reading correctly. They were reading 0.
Yes.
And there's been a substantial effort by both departments to go back through and replace those meters.
Yes, and right now, and I don't know if this is the proper time to say it or not, we can't change them out because we can't get them.
Right.
Thanks to COVID, I ordered 100 in May, and I think I've gotten 26 out of the 100 so far. I keep ordering, but they're just not showing up. So I can't, it's just thanks to what's happened in the world,
It's happening to everybody.
we're not the only person that's run into this,
The
so.
last 12 months, and last 12 and the last 24 months, what's the number that we've replaced?
I would say we've worked on 250. And we're replacing them, they're, the meter's the only accurate the day that you put them in. Just so everybody knows. Most of the time when the meter gets sent, there's a tag with them. There's three different flows they do on them. Most of the time, a meter's only accurate to 97%. I can go pull a brand new one right now, and the best you can get is 97 to 98%.
But the older they get, the more they under-register, particularly a residential meter.
Yes, because they're mechanical, so they, everything wears out, so it's a wearing out part, so it's gonna wear out.
Well, the residential meters, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're more of a technical person than I am, but they're a positive displacement meter, and this little chamber fills up with water. Well, and it goes through an aperture that trips the counter. Well, that aperture, as it gets older, it dries out, and it may let some leak through, it may not trip like it's supposed to, there's all kinds of things that can happen.
And Dean, you did touch on a good part. We could put a new meter in any of your houses today, and until you hit 999 gallons and 9/10 of a gallon, you don't pay anything. So you have to hit 1,000 gallons before you pay a penny. I mean, you're gonna pay the minimum bill, but if you use, I guess I don't know how to say it correctly, but if you stayed under the 999 this month, yes, you're gonna pay for it next month, but then you're behind. We're behind the 8 ball the whole time.
Multiply that times 1,700 customers. Multiply that times the water loss that you're billing sewer customers on, and you're really it's just snowballing.
Jamie, what's the cost of a meter?
The meters that we're getting right now are about between, I can't tell you because we've had 4 price increases in 5 months.
Just roughly.
About $150 to $175 to get them. Time you pay shipping and handling and everything here, about $150 to $175 a meter.
Time to put them in, hours per meter.
Depends. I mean, we could run into some that are hard piped in. It could be 2 hours.
If everything goes well, how long?
Half hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes for
But
2
you're saying the
people.
meters you're replacing the old ones with still don't register under 1,000 gallons?
No.
So how do you?
It's the bill,
That was the technology at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to say this, but she was here when they put them in and, that's.
25 years ago.
I mean, I'm not trying to be smart. I mean, I'm not trying to say that.
Remember?
But Mary's been here. I mean, that's the technology. That was high tech when we probably put them in 25 years ago.
Yeah.
There's technology out here now that is so well advanced that people that want to sit home and that really monitor it, can sit there and watch how many gallons their child used tonight to take a shower. I mean, there's stuff out there that we can do.
And I'll give you, I don't mean to interrupt, but another example. A woman that works for USDA put something on Facebook. I don't know if anybody else is on Facebook, and I'm a rabid Facebook user.
Never heard of it.
So I know what my children do, but anyway. She made and she lives in the Lincoln, Delaware area. And she said that they have, what do you call them, not radio read, but the ones where you can sit at a desk and read all the
Yes.
meters. They called her and told her that her meter was registering more than her normal water use from the day before. And her toilet was running.
And
That's an example of the technology now compared to the technology 25 years ago.
You can look at the new technologies. You can download them every morning. And I'm going to use for instance Jack's house. Your toilet's running. Well, it shows that it had a consecutive usage for 24 hours. You can go through there and set it up. If it goes over this many gallons for so many hours straight, you can set it up. I could call you the next morning and say, or go beat on your door and leave a sticky note or something and say, hey, you have something running, please contact us. I mean, that's the new technology. And that, there's people out here that want to see their usage because they're very conservative people.
If I can, the alternative is you have to wait a full month so you get your next bill to see that
Right,
difference.
exactly.
I mean,
And by then, it's significant.
And back then, I mean, when we put these meters in, well, when you put these meters in, these were state-of-the-art touch read, which was so much better than a guy with a meter book. That was great.
And then
But now you can sit in the desk downstairs and read all the meters at one time, and you don't have little maintenance elves running around all over town.
If we had that system.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
How
But
much
that's state-of-the-art now.
How much are those meters? Just curious.
between 200 and 225.
Oh, so you're only talking like a $75 difference?
The big thing would be is the switching out the meters, the personnel.
And you gotta count your billing software in there too, your billing
Well,
software.
most of the meters that we've looked at, that the switch to Tyler will work with, Before I even started any of this, Natalie did ask Tyler, the couple systems that we've looked at. So yes, they should mesh, if it's the best word to say.
And the cost of, because I don't want to steal your thunder, Gene, but you're going to get to a point where you're going to say that the meters are over the replacement part, which is 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And as you've mentioned, we've far surpassed that. So looking at a total meter replacement, even if it was phased for the town, to go back with what we have versus going back with a smart meter system, do you have a ballpark of those two costs?
Yes, and I don't, it's hard to tell you with today's current prices. I mean, some of the stuff I've gotten has been months ago before this really took effect. So I usually use the 2,000 rule of thumb meters. So you would be looking at between 350 to 400,000. Now this is just the meter. This isn't including labor and time to do it. So you'd be looking between 350 and 450,000 to replace what we had in kind. You'd only be really looking at about 600,000 to go to a radio read, and that's installing antennas. But I mean, they've done a study. The one and only place we probably would need antennas is Franklin Avenue. The more antennas you put up, the more money you put up. So everything has always come back that Franklin Avenue is not central to town, but because some of the town doesn't have very big trees, they can maneuver around it. There's a couple places where we would have to manually read. One, i.e. state police barracks. It's all surrounded by woods. It just can't get the signal out. Really, other than that, that's about the only place that we would. I think right now everything we found is like a 98 to 99% able to be automatically downloaded with a touch of a button.
And I'm deviating a little bit here from the slides, but if you multiply that cost, if you divide that cost rather, by the amount of water that you're losing, the time savings and the manpower and woman power of going out and reading these meters now, over the course of 1 year, they'll pay for themselves probably in less than a year, or at least by a year and a half to 2 years at minimum.
And this is the new state-of-the-art meter you're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So with the purchase of this state-of-the-art meter, you look at, because nothing lasts forever, and I'm assuming these guys die within 10 years or under. When you look at the purchase of those, do you see, is there already a process that we can look at as far as 5 years from now, 6 years from now, we got to trade this guy out? Is there a trade-in benefit or an upgrade? You know what I'm saying? I was just,
I can't answer that because I've never had the meter. So I mean,
right.
I've never really thought of asking that. I mean, it's like your car's warranty's almost not expired, but 1 year after the warranty's expired, can we get some kind of revenue back for changing it? I can't answer that.
I mean, I'm not saying revenue, or even if there's hey, if you guys upgrade it 4 years and 16 months, well, I made that number up. Versus 5 years and 22 months, then you might get, you know what I'm saying, that kind of thing. I'm just wondering.
I can't answer that.
I can't answer that, but I'm sorry. But one of the things I would recommend as an adjunct to that is to start a comprehensive asset management program where you plan on replacing those meters over a period of time, phasing in the replacement. So many, each
So we're not
year.
doing this again in 10 years.
Well,
Yeah,
that's where you would start to build in that reserve
Exactly.
amount that could be allocated over the period and lifespan of those meters.
So it's sitting in the bank when you're, the next time.
And we haven't discussed it as a council, but you could potentially use ARPA funds to do this project.
That is correct.
We haven't talked about it.
I think that even
The
comes
neat
up.
thing that Gene is.
Nice little slide. I like it.
I think that's one of the recommendations, I'm not sure.
The neat thing, though, to keep in mind as well with a change out of meters, if that is down the road, again, going with a new meter, you pour a gallon of water at home, you're paying for that gallon. You're not at that 99 trip.
But you're not paying for the gallon that somebody down the road's using either, or your next door neighbor's using.
So when we do this, if we were to go down this route, I'm thinking in my head still about this lost water, and I know that this is probably being petty, but when you think about lost water, you're thinking hydrants and whatever else. In my mind, I was thinking, isn't that part of the lost?
It can be, yes.
In this
it
slide,
can
the
be.
hydrant drainage. So how do you meter those too? What do you?
Well, you
Usually 5% of your total overall you lose for hydrant flushing.
Okay.
That's just, that's
That's not-
AWA,
That
that's
could be part
AWA
of that,
standards.
that
Right, I
could be part of
understand
that loss, but you don't, without meters, you don't know how much of it
Yeah.
is real and how much it is apparent. Or your revenues.
Is there any, are there any areas in town that, I want to say hydrants, but that meters are in worse shape than another part? Like if we were to do a phase-in, is
Yes,
there an area?
I'm gonna
that-
be honest with you, the downtown, some of the oldest meters, because it was the oldest part, you know.
The oldest part.
I mean, you start with the oldest and go to the newest, because Decatur Farms, them meters, 2008, 9, so they're, you know, they're beyond their life expectancy, but they're gonna read more accurate than,
Right.
you know, I'm not saying because it's the old part of town, but
But
the
it-
heart of the town is where you need to start and go out.
If you have an inventory of them, then you should, from the meter cards, it should give you the dates that they were put in.
Now, some of the larger ones, I will tell you that, and I'm not picking on AGH, but we have been trying to change their meter out a little bit more frequently. I mean, they are our largest water user in town. Next is some of the schools, because they're just using, I mean,
A lot of water.
well, I've talked to a couple of municipalities close by. There's one municipality within, I'm gonna say, the city of Salisbury, I do believe they change out 5 meters every year. There's 2 at PRMC, Purdue, and there's a couple in the industrial park. And they change them out once a year because the water loss, they make up for paying for that new meter every year and their personnel within 1 month. So,
And those are more expensive meters, because they're usually compound meters, they have different.
yeah, the high
lines.
flow and the low flow. And that's one of the things where, you know, some of the schools are 96, 97, year 96, 97, so they've had a mess of water run through them.
I'm still here, 96, for a while.
And I think that to show the impact that you and the finance department have been doing, what was it, 12 months ago or so? How many meters did we have that were reading incorrectly or zero? Several hundred.
It was several hundred.
And then those have been identified by both departments and.
Well, I will
phased
say,
meter replacement.
they were addressed or identified by the Natalie's department, the finance department. They've done an excellent job, they went through the whole list. I mean, we've gone out and just double checked, but like I said, I can't replace them when I can't even get meters because,
Right.
you know, I have to keep a little bit of inventory in case somebody's meter busts or somebody's building a new house. I do have to keep some inventory to keep that. And I mean, I don't want to be saying, everybody saying that I'm not doing my job. Well, I'm doing the best what I can do with equipment that I'm able to receive. I can't receive it if they're not, they're backlog.
The other part of this is that these meters are old enough, if you mention an inventory, you're keeping inventory of the same technology you already have. I don't know at what point it may happen, but at some point, they're gonna start supporting those meters, you're not gonna be able to get parts. So, I mean, that's something else to think about. I don't know how you quantify that, but that certainly is a factor, even if it's a minor factor.
I can add to the support. Today we faced the challenge. Melissa's desktop is supposed to be going for replacement to a laptop to convert all the software that we utilize in. So basically right now we're not going directly from the reader to the tiler. We're going from 4 different readers to 4 different in-between softwares and then to tiler. So 2 of the support companies don't exist, and CART's computers cannot convert the data. It cannot do anything because of the new Windows, because of the platform. So the old readers that crew goes out on the field and utilize them to read the meters basically is obsolete. So she's forced to keep her old computer and a laptop right now and work from both and do more manual work to convert from one to another because we have no choice, we have nowhere to go. We're forced to use the old readers because we have to read the old meters till we are at the next step.
So from a dollar standpoint, it's just gonna continue to cost you more and more money.
And also to back up what Natalie said, we have 4 readers, one of them's down. It's irreplaceable. I mean, we need to go to another, know the technology. So we're doing something we're supposed to be using 4 for with 3 right now. We're making it work. I mean, it's been that way for, yeah. So
25 years.
I mean, so we're, you know, it's all in your hands to help me make it work better, more better, am I saying? But
To summarize, we've got a lot of issues that
well,
need to be fixed.
but, you know, we're beating water up. You can't fix, if you don't fix water, you're not gonna fix sewer.
And sewer costs you almost 3 times as much.
So,
to
you
collect.
know, that needs to be put in there too, because the water's your cash register.
But explain that, because people don't all understand that we bill sewer based off
How
of.
much water is used.
Yes, and how much water you use is how your sewer is billed. So if it's inaccurate, then if you're getting free water, you're getting free sewer. And like Gene said, wastewater costs more to treat. I mean, we have,
2.9 times more.
Well, let's finish the presentation.
Yeah.
There is more to
Yeah,
this.
we got derailed.
I know, but I mean, I want people to understand.
This is the biggest issue.
And I just have one more question to go with that. Now, so we have maybe I missed this. So we have the roundabout price of a new meter. What is the program, the software that would go? And I believe you said Tyler is compatible.
As of right now, Tyler pledges to support any smart meters in place.
Okay, and then we wouldn't have these 4 other readers, right?
No, we would just
It
have,
would just be streamlined.
yes, we would have one reader of the smart meters.
Right.
That would be converted file directly going into the Tyler and uploaded to each individual account.
Okay, thank you.
And that would give you the detail to be able to detect if somebody's toilet is running or they left the garden
that's-
hose on or whatever, just by the usage.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a, you know, that is a benefit. And that's something that, you know, other towns that I've heard stories is like, you know, they've read meters and then next day they come in and they read all the meters again, like every morning they would read the meters. And this is used, for instance, you know, Troy's house. Hey, red flag come up, you know, he used water for 24 hours consecutive. Or, you know, so we would go there and like watch the meter and say, knock on the door and say, you know, Mr. Brunel, do you have something running in your house? No, I don't. Yes, you do. We had a flag for 24 hours. You print out the copy, take with you and say, your meter had a gallon a minute for the last, you know.
That's a lot of gallons.
So, I mean, that way it helps the town conserve too. Because sometimes there are people out here that really, you know, they watch what they use, they make sure that they're doing the best for the water usage and stuff like that. And then you can really see what people are using in a day.
And the good news, if there is good news in this, I think, is that if you follow the recommendation to restructure the rates, once you can meter every gallon, I think some of the lower end users, the single person households, will actually end up saving money. But yet you'll be ahead of the game and have a reserve, I think, I predict. Now, I can't quote you figures, but that's the way it usually turns out.
I like your crystal ball.
Well, that's, you know, that's why I've seen it happen time and again. And what I've seen from looking at your rates, and I'm not making an actual rate recommendation tonight as far as numbers, I'm making a recommendation that you change the structure. But, you know, from what I've seen of your numbers, your lower end users are overpaying in many cases, and your higher end users are underpaying in terms of equitability. But anyway, this is your usage curve. I always do this just to see where the majority of customers fall. And over 2/3 of your customers use 5,000 gallons or less. So anytime you make a rate decision, you want to be mindful of those 71.4% of your customer base. You only have about not quite 5% who use over 20,000 gallons. So that's just something that I automatically do to get a feel for the customer base. And that'll be something that you'll want to look at before you actually set rates. Just some observations, despite the fact that you have you don't have any debt, which is very unusual for a water system. You don't have any debt, you're not recovering your costs, your system is not sustainable as it goes under the current rate structure. The replacing lean meters alone is not going to change that. It's going to make an enormous difference, but that's not going to change your sustainability. I'm having a little trouble talking tonight, I don't know why.
Would you like some water?
Thank you. The current rate structure is not really equitable. With the tiered base rate and gallons included in the base rate, it's not really equitable, particularly for the lower end users. And the best way to recover your fixed cost, your debt service and reserves, or in this case just reserves, or eventual debt service even, is through a fixed rate, and then everybody pays from the first gallon once you can meter all those. And I always do what I call a break-even rate. I figure out what your fixed cost should be, or could be. And to cover your fixed costs, because you have no debt, would be like $3.15 per EDU. But to do that, in reslicing that pie, if we go back to the beginning, that would bring your volume rate up over $6. It would be like $6.70, $6.67, $6.70. And that's certainly not acceptable to anybody, I'm sure. So I did a little playing with figures, but the figures you see in the written report are not recommended rates. They're just meant to be, illustrate what could be and a way to change the rate structure.
Before you go off of this slide, can we talk for a moment about the debt?
Certainly.
And it's my understanding that the fund is not capable of obtaining debt within it because the sewer and the water are tied so closely to one another, and the leveraging that we currently have on the wastewater.
I will get into that, but they basically don't look, they look at them as individual systems, and even though you have no debt on your water system, they being the lenders, USDA principally, recognize that it is not sustainable under present circumstances. They also don't like to see systems that have that level of unaccounted for water before they will, oh, bless your heart.
Oh, yeah, it was like a shot glass size.
I feel right there. They may agree to lend money on that basis, but they would only lend money if you did certain things, like got a handle on the unaccounted for water, change the rates, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, what you're saying is practically true, but it's not the same reasoning. They recognize it as not being sustainable, and I've been told that by USDA.
But the action items that can get us to a point of being able to obtain some level of debt service on the fund are getting the unaccounted water accounted for, and restructuring the rates so that we're at a point where we can bill effectively.
Yeah, well, and having some reserves. Because when you, and I don't want to get too far afield, but when you apply to USDA, they factor in what they call short-lived assets. It's basically a reserve, but it's for assets that don't last longer than 5 years, and that has to be factored in, and they want to see that in your financial statements before they will agree to lend you money. So there's a lot of factors there, but basically bottom line is it's not sustainable under the current circumstances. And that's what they'll look like. That's what they'll look at.
Thank you.
Recommendations, obviously, we've already gone there, but replace the meters with a system that will read every gallon. I need another sip of water. Even after the meters are in, I would suggest a water audit and we can help you with that. We use the AWWA format for water audits to see what other sources of non-revenue water there may be. I feel that meters would make up a lot of the distance, a lot of the gap, but there may be other things too that you can do.
So how do you,
Would you like some water?
But for those out there listening, what exactly does a water audit mean?
A water audit takes what you're producing and then tries to identify the different things that you're not getting paid for. Aside from, how much you estimate. Okay, we flush hydrants twice a year. our flow rate averages X gallons a minute, we flushed for 20 minutes, and you figure out what that was. And you figure out roughly how many miles of pipe you have, you figure out roughly the volume of water that stays in the pipes, you figure out how much you're using to backflush your filters. It's a lot of mathematical calculations and guesstimates, but it takes it down to, okay, this is what we really are losing, and try to get that below 15%. So that's something that we can help with when and if the time comes. But I would strongly suggest that you think about that even after you get your meters in, to identify, because it's likely to be other things as well, and it can be little teeny things, but when you multiply them by 365 days a year, it can add up. I would suggest that you do some interim rate measures, and we can talk about the timetable for that, but I would suggest that you start with some sort of a flat rate surcharge. I do have some figures to recommend, but the ultimate figure is up to you all, but that you start with interim measures to build up a capital reserve, and that you restructure the rates as soon as you can get meters in, even if they're not all in. Even if you just have one area in, it can make a difference. A minimum charge per EDU, and again, the structure to me is more important than the number. A minimum charge per equivalent dwelling unit, and your larger users, and I use equivalent meter size, and I think that's explained in the written report. I use equivalent meter size to come up with what an EDU is rather than gallons, because gallons can change, the meter doesn't. And I use the equivalent meter size is right out of here, so a minimum charge per EDU, and then to cover those fixed costs. And then if you do get into any debt service for system replacement, treatment improvements, or whatever, then you can factor that into your fixed charge as well in the future. And then a volumetric charge per 1,000 gallons. Now, you can tier that if you'd like. My suggestion, if you want it tiered, is to make it a graduated increasing block rate, but no bigger than the system is. The most equitable way to me is to charge the same rate per 1,000 gallons, because everybody only pays for what they use. They're not paying for what their neighbor's using, and they're not underpaying for what they're using either. But, again, that's a policy decision, but I can help you if you'd rather they be tiered rates. And then reevaluate once you get figures in for this year, because all of the numbers that I played with going along trying to come up with a rate were based on an oddball year, 2020. And 2020 has been an oddball year in so many ways, but have actual figures for what would be a more quote-unquote normal year.
So now,
Go ahead.
the restructuring of the rates, the usage charge per 1,000 gallons based on variable costs, that can be done with the meters that we have currently, correct? Because they roll at 1,000.
It can be, but I'm not sure you're going to get anywhere.
I didn't know, because I see with the FY 22-23, so we're looking at probably not being able to adjust this until after the first of the year.
That would be, yeah, that would be my guess. I mean, I'm not sure that you will gain as much ground doing it that way, because you do have that 25%. It's almost 27% loss.
So is it best in the short term, even though it's advisable to change per 1,000 gallons, that we introduce a fixed EDU charge and wait until the meters are replaced before we start to?
That would give you a cushion, I think, faster. And prepare you for, being able to self-fund the meters. And somewhere in here, I don't know whether it's in the report or in the recommendations, self-funding, I think, is even better in terms of building up sustainability and being able to do more with your system. I would suggest $5 per residential EDU and $10 per commercial EDU, but that's not a magic number. That's just a number. but put that in a reserve fund. And what I always recommend to any mayor and council when it comes to reserve, make sure you adopt whatever legislation you need to adopt to keep successors from raiding the fund. Because you all may have the best of intentions in establishing the fund, but if somebody comes in after you and decides they want to buy a new police car with it, that's not going to work. So trying to keep it, adopt whatever you need to adopt to make sure it stays with the water fund is my suggestion. And then reanalyze all the costs based on actual figures for another year before you actually come up with a number for whatever rate you want to charge.
Gene, does that reserve ever get capped?
That would be a matter of policy, and that's up to you all. You can cap it. I would suggest if you cap it as a percentage of operating so that it floats instead of capping it with a dollar amount. But again, that's a policy decision. That's up to you all.
And the thing is that capping, I think, is a good discussion to have, or a sustainable level, but I don't think that our water or sewer fund are short of capital needs.
Just to give you a little clarification. If we ever wanted to build a new water tower, which I feel that strongly that we need to do in the near future, fairly soon, 500,000 gallon water tower, $5 million. A new well and a new building, give or take, probably $1 million, $1.5 million. The average water main in town, I'm shooting from the hip on this. If I averaged everything up, I'd say 1950. We are working with some older water mains, 1935s, Jeff, we found on the mats. Stuff is going to wear out. I feel that it's met and exceeded its life expectancy. So I don't want to catch everybody off guard, but we're looking at drilling a new well for Branch Street. That well was put in November of 1948. It was commissioned. How many gallons has it pumped since November of 1948?
Yeah.
Well one, and we need a building there. We've been very fortunate. It's not rained much this summer, so I didn't have to break out my tarps and tents. I'm not trying to run off a tangent here, but the system, it is aging.
So very soon is as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah. I'm not going to beat around the bush, but yes, we need to look at the well house. We need to look at a fourth well. We need to look at the aging infrastructure, the meters. Where would you like me to stop? The valve and the hydrants. Everything in town is,
That's where an asset management plan can really come in handy because it can help you plan for those capital expenses and you get a capital improvement plan to go along with it.
we do.
We have the ability to help with that, and we can even help you with geolocating and mapping as well.
And we do lead and copper tests. The reason we have to do this is because our system is, it's old. It's lead and copper into it. So that's why we have to do it. You're talking, if you had to do that right now, you're talking 1,600 water connections.
And
Give or take, what we've not done, but I could probably take it around to 1,500 of them tonight in a matter of a few minutes.
The new lead and copper rule requires you to identify lead service lines and to come up with a plan to replace them. So that's something.
Is that
coming
a
down.
is that a statute?
I beg your pardon?
Is that a statute?
That's part of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the new lead and copper rule. And you
And
will
that's-
have a phased-in
that-
year based on system size when you have to do that. But you will eventually have to do it, undoubtedly.
And a lot of that is thankful to the place that was Midwest that was falsifying, I can't think of the,
Yeah.
Flint?
Flint.
Yeah, so that is thankful to them. Some of that is because of that. So, I can't stress it enough, but I can't keep going on because I could go all night and I want to go home and eat dinner sometime tonight. So.
I will give a shameless plug, if I may. We have a two-part class, virtual class coming up this coming Thursday and Friday geared towards elected boards, governing boards, managers on Safe Drinking Water Act compliance. And one of them is, we're not getting into lead and copper, but it's a regulatory overview. If anybody wants the link to sign on, you can sit right in your living room and sign on, unless, of course, you have a job,
The $5 you have per residential EDU, that raises, I think, somewhere around $100,000. Now, you did that with your contract.
I have not actually,
Well, all I did was
Yeah.
take 5 times 12 months
Yeah.
times 1,700 meters, get 102
Yeah.
grand. So is that basically, you're thinking that capital is just for replacing these meters down the road?
I think that will, well, replacing whatever needs to be replaced down the road. You need some sort of repair and replacement reserve. You also have no emergency reserve. If you were to have catastrophic failure, it would be the general fund or whatever.
You don't have to look far for that.
Yeah.
We had a water well fail that
Yeah.
without the ARPA money, we would have been going into the general fund reserves.
Right.
So you don't have to look far for those things.
And when I do the reserves, that 9% is not really 9%, it just works out to 9%, because I use 2.5% of your revenues for a repair and replacement reserve, meant to accumulate, okay, year after year. I do 12.5%, which is only 6 weeks of operating, 12.5% for emergency reserves. Most people who do what I do and who follow the AWWA rules say that you should have 125% of your operating at any given time in any budget year. So 9% is, that's bare minimum.
So I have a question. With the newer developments and projects that are happening throughout the town of Berlin, their meters, they're the meters that we're already using.
Yeah.
So with these folks that are starting new things, even though we've not upgraded yet, but for these folks that are starting new projects now and say in the coming months, we're still putting the outdated, so then we're gonna have to go back.
Well, we don't have.
Well, I shouldn't say that. We don't have anything to read the new stuff with because we don't have that.
Yes.
I'm asking that because in my mind, I feel
No,
like it's a.
but at least you're
business.
putting something out there so people can hear it. too.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just, in my mind, I'm seeing things happening every day and new things coming.
So where are you going with your thoughts? If you're placing right now a new smart meters in place, simultaneously you would be replacing your oldest.
Right.
But if somebody else come in
And
with a
starts
brand new
building.
construction, you would obviously put a brand new meter.
Exactly,
You would
that
not
way,
put them in
from
that.
the gate, he's already
Right.
paying for every drop of water, each one of those 572 units are using, yes. Because otherwise, we're losing, right?
Correct. It would become your secondary priority in the same time.
Well, not to change the subject too, but our engineer's texting me stuff because he couldn't be here tonight because he's coming back from vacation, but new lead and copper rule goes in effective in 2022. I think enforcement starts December 23. It requires all asset management plans showing all water services.
So that's big too.
There's also a new rule in the new lead and copper rule called find and fix. If you find them, you have to fix them right
And we
then
have
and there.
if we dig up a service and we find lead, and when we've been replacing valves, we've been going outside to make sure we remove that. But I'm pretty certain that joint that's 20 feet away is probably lead, but as long as, by my understanding, and I shouldn't say this and people probably getting uproar, if you don't see it, you don't have to fix it. That's their rule of thumb, but if you see it, if you visually see it, it's gotta come out. And we have been, with all of our new valves on North Main Street, the ones we want to do on South Main, if we find lead, it will come out. And we've been doing our lead goosenecks when we had leaks, we've been taking them right out, going all plastic and brass.
The other side is that we've talked a lot about the expense of all these capital projects, but we don't have to fund them all with cash
Right.
each time. So
Well,
the
and you don't have to
idea,
fund them all in the same year either.
right,
you
but
know?
the idea is to get the funds in a position where they can take on some form of debt service. And with that being said, there are municipalities that float bonds regularly to help cover some of this.
And you have the advantage in Maryland that my Delaware municipalities don't have in the Maryland bond program as well, so.
But the reality on something, though, let's not lose sight. Today is November the 1st of 2021. The current capital reserve that we have for water and wastewater is how much?
I don't see any
Zero.
indicators that I saw.
Okay, zero.
Yeah.
But that's the same for the stormwater fund.
That's right.
No, I don't mean to pick on you.
Well, I mean,
every
I'm in
fund-
charge of all three departments and make you feel proud tonight.
But it's not Jamie's fault either.
No, and I know that, and that's why we're here to help, ask you all to help me.
Exactly.
And when I say me, I'm gonna help the departments I'm in charge of. And I do take it to heart because I love working here, this is my job, and, you know,
Well, and-
We
and
want
my-
to give you more than duct tape,
But at the
Jamie.
end of the day, it's not just helping you, it's gonna eventually.
well, but it helps the customer too, because
Exactly, that's what.
if we
that's what
update
makes
stuff,
it
you're
easier.
gonna be out of water less time. If we can put new valves in and minimize water leaks, you know, it's helping everybody here. It's not helping just my department,
It's helping the citizens.
it's helping the
of town of Berlin.
citizens of Berlin. So I mean, yes, I understand, but I do take it to heart because, you know, I've been here 21 years and this is what I enjoy doing.
And you're the guys out there digging it up and putting it in.
And my job is to help you build your capacity to sustain the system. So, you know, it may not be what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear.
Jamie, based on what you have to work with, I personally think you're doing fine.
And I appreciate it, and it's not all me, it's, you know, we have some good guys, I mean, we've got guys that's been here 36 years, like Marvin. He might be on his 37th, I'm not for sure. But I
Here when
mean,
I got here.
you know, it takes a good group of guys, and I mean, you know, just like yesterday, I had a sewer blockage, and I called one, and there was two guys up together, so they came in and took care of it for me. But, you know, yes, I say
Yesterday was
but,
Sunday.
yeah, but we work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, rain or shine. I
Yes.
mean, that's our job.
Christmas, you guys are down there with the
No,
rain, I
well,
know.
by law, by our MD law, by MD's rules and regulations, we have to maintain that plant 7 days a week, minimum of, you know, 4 hours a day. Then during the week, we have to, you know, weekends they do exemptions, it's 4 hours, but during the week, we have to be there at least 8 hours a week, or 8 hours a day, excuse me.
Okay.
I'm going on my tangent, sorry.
Thank you for allowing us to hijack your presentation.
That's all right, that's all right, that's what I'm here for, that's what I'm here for. But again, use these figures as reanalyze all these costs again, once you can measure all your water. That's the bottom line. Wastewater, it's not that much different in terms of recommendations. Again, even though you're paying down your debt, your deficit is decreasing, but as you already know, you're way top heavy with debt on the wastewater system. The debt service and reserves is about a third of the total. You're only putting about 37% into your operations, whereas with the water it was 53 or 58% into operations. So personnel is right around the same percentage. So the pie looks a lot different in the wastewater side. And your deficit is decreasing, I assume because you're paying down debt, but even paying down the debt, your costs are going to go up. So you're still not sustainable under the current circumstances. And a lot of that is goes back to the water loss or the unaccounted for water, but also to the rate structure, the way the rates are structured, not the numbers that you're charging, but the structure of the rates.
And I will, and not to interrupt her on this, and I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Like I said on the meters, I've had 4 price increases on chemicals for the treatment plant in 5 months. I mean, how can you budget for something like that? I mean, luckily we were in the middle of a year and we're starting out the new year, but you know, there's nothing I can do. It's out of my control and the chemicals we need. So, I mean, that's just on the chemical side. That's not including all the mechanical and just everything's going through the roof. So,
I mean, chemicals are needed or used several times a day.
yes, ma'am.
It's a continuous
Saw that,
feed in
went
most
there.
cases, yeah. Just some observations, I mentioned before, your wastewater service is about 2.9, almost 3 times as expensive as your water. That's not really a surprise. Your base charge, unlike the water, your base charge, even the lowest tier, is too low to cover your fixed costs. So you're not covering your debt service and reserves with that fixed charge, even with the highest tier. The current usage rate is higher than it needs to be based on that, because you're not recovering the fixed costs with the base charge. Is that, everybody following? Is that making sense? Your debt, we already know, takes a huge portion of what you're collecting. 30% of your total revenue and more than a third of your rate revenue. And the difference between total and rate, total includes connection, restricted funds, connection fees, impact fees, and things like that. Your non-revenue water has an even deeper effect on the wastewater, as we talked about before, because that's how you're billing for wastewater. That 42 million gallons at $8.50 a thousand comes up to $362,000. Now, again, if even half of that is the lost water, that's still over $150,000. What's that? $180,000 a year. Recommendations, again, restructure the rates similar to what was recommended for the water and institute some sort of fixed charge per EDU with a volumetric charge based on your variable cost. Try to identify the other sources of your non-revenue water through a water audit. That can also help you determine if you have a leaky area, for example. Because water doesn't always come to the top of the ground if the pipe's got a hole in it. It eventually will, but if it doesn't find the path of least resistance, it can be leaking underground. That's how these sinkholes happen. So institute some sort of interim measures and then again reanalyze as the meters go in to come up with an honest to goodness rate that will be more equitable. Again, the numbers that I came up with are just simply based on 2.9 times the $5 and 2.9 times the $10 for your wastewater, because that's the ratio of wastewater to water. And make sure that you adopt whatever regulations you need to keep it from being rated in the future. And then reanalyze and arrive at new rates at whatever point in the future. If you start with this surcharge, if you will, for lack of a better word, this base charge per EDU now, then maybe there would be enough meters in that you could, in the fiscal year 22, maybe you could start looking at rates, or maybe, the timetable is up to you all. These are just suggestions. In conclusion, neither system is financially sustainable under the present circumstances. That's not a surprise. That does affect your long-term sustainability because it affects your ability to get credit to fund any future capital improvements. So it starts to snowball there too. What are you laughing about?
Just
Oh.
all of it.
Oh, okay. Obviously, we beat the meter system to death, but obviously the old and insufficient metering is a large culprit, but that alone is not going to change it. And there's some things that I would suggest in addition to changing the meters, and one would be start working on an asset management plan. And I just spent a whole week in training on setting that up and helping to train how to do that. But we have different mechanisms that can help you. But set up an asset management plan for all of your assets, which would include an inventory, a capital improvement plan, and a way to sustain the system over time. And then establishing that capital reserve, starting immediately if possible, to save up money for that.
So let's go back. We had some fun with water, and I'd like to discuss sewer a little bit more.
Where do you want me to go on the slides?
So you can pause. I took some notes. So the borrowing, to get the sewer fund to a level where it can sustain itself within the metrics that it should be for debt service. It's at, you said almost above 30%, when it should be within your report, you said below 25.
Right.
So getting it below 25 would be ideal from a lender's perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not the lender. They're going to do a lot more underwriting than that.
Right.
They're going to look at a lot of different ratios.
And the other side of that is that when we start looking at the rates, I think we had did EA do the? DBF did the study for us. And when they started looking and comparing our EDU charges regionally, we were one of the most expensive in town, well, in the area. And
Not to cut you off, but also understand one thing. we are the largest abrasive facility in the state of Maryland.
No, it's-
Our water does not discharge to the coastal bays. Ours is sprayed on loblolly trees and forestation for the uptake of the nitrogen. If we will never ever get a stream discharge permit at our treatment plant unless somebody else can work magic. But they have to understand we're doing the most environmentally friendly thing with our wastewater. MDE's forcing a lot of people to go to it also. So, I mean, Gene can back me up on that. We were more advanced in this aspect than a lot of other places are on our discharge of our wastewater.
That's true, but the other part of it is, you can't set your rates based on what somebody else is charging. You have to look at your cost and your pie.
I understand that, but we also cannot work in a vacuum either. So would it be an understandable thing to say that you're going to see other systems begin to arrive at an EDU charge that's similar to ours when they start to adopt spray sites?
Well, MDE's not at a very big, letting you get your permit any bigger than what you already have.
Okay.
Another place locally that had just gone on spraying facility year-round is Newark, Maryland. I can't tell you their prices because but they lost their stream discharge permit also, which the county was, they want to go to spray irrigation also, so. But I do feel that you will see more places looking for the alternate discharge, because once they're to that discharge limit, I don't foresee MDE granting any more larger discharges, or they have to find a different source with their water.
And I can't give you a scientific opinion, but from what I see in both Maryland and Delaware, more systems are not fully recovering all their costs than are. So if somebody down the road is not charging the same thing per EDU, it could be that they're not sustainable either. So it's not, I understand you don't want to be outclassed in by another system, but there are a lot more factors than just the number that they're charging to.
So then the other side of this gets back to a discussion that I know at least Jamie, Natalie, and the town administrator and I had during the budget process, is that I think Jamie each year starts his race behind the finish, or behind the start line, because the spray site, when we brought that online, was not accurately adjusted for when it comes to the rates. So we do have to take a look at that portion of the operational expenditures when we start to look at these rates.
And there's another operational, and it's a lot of people don't think about it, is the town has 250 horsepower pumps at 9 miles. Pumps it into one lagoon, spray site A, Liberty Town. We turn around and have 200 horsepower pumps at another 7 miles to Newark, to the
Across the
spray
road
site.
from my house, by the way.
Yes, spray site B.
Thank you very much.
So yes, we move water more than, every time you touch water, and Troy can probably back up, the more you touch water, and that's more electric, that's more mechanical, that's more, it's
We're supposed to
everything.
wear out.
It's everything, so, and also our lagoons are open, you can never close them off. So if we get 1 inch of rain, we're spraying 1 inch extra of water that God gave us.
Yeah.
So that other people have to understand, if we get a 5 inch rain, we get 5 inches in our lagoon, and we have 2 of them. So yes, we have to get rid of that water just as our normal permit. So I don't think some people understand that sometimes. So if we had, like the other year it was wet, yes, we treated a lot of water here, but if we had 20 inches that year, that lagoon, we had to get rid of 20 inches out there also. If we, like this year's been dry, our numbers are down because we've not gotten fill up our lagoons have been dropping because we're not getting the rain.
And part of the spray irrigation project, the first one was a USDA loan, and that's a 40-year loan, so you're still paying debt on that.
So the debt is where that we tie the EDU. When you mentioned that we are at most of the highest or close to the highest, the structure for the debt, the EDU is restricted for capital projects and EDUs. So for us to sustain the payment of the debt each year, we have a certain number of EDUs to be sold. Lowering the EDU price is not even advisable nor possible. Because some years we are not even close to commit to the number of EDUs And that's where the borrowings were happening, on the side of not covering the cost of the spray sites. But the years that we have not received enough EDUs to cover the debt, that's where it's happening.
And I don't think that we're at all talking about lowering the price of the EDU. I just would
No,
like
I
us
think
to
it's
be.
too low now.
I would just like us to be cognizant of the fact that when people start to look and come to Berlin, we have to understand that they're looking at EDU charges in the area.
Well, again, look at that pie. If your per EDU charge in the user rate now is too low, you can bring, I think your volumetric rate is too high. So you can bring that down a little. Now, that might mean that people are still paying a little bit more, but it won't be nearly as much as if both those figures went up.
Now, we talked about fixed reserve or capital expenditures for sewer and for water. There are other municipalities that look at things like fixture costs. Do you have any experience in the pros and cons associated with that type of?
I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean setting your fixed charge based on number of fixtures in the house?
Right, so other areas take a look at like each fixture and then there's a multiple that's applied to that?
That's not done as much as it used to be, and one of the reasons is you have to have an inventory of each individual connection and each fixture in that connection and so forth. And the person power and the person hours that takes is, from the get-go, is pretty staggering. If you think about, you got, let's say round number, you got 1,800 to 2,000 different customers. 1,700, 1,800, I forget.
So that's not the most advisable way to move forward?
I don't think so, because, somebody could add on a bathroom and you don't know it, and all of a sudden they're using more water. So, to me, it's based on meter size, because the larger the meter, the more water's gonna go through it.
And
That's
some
why I
meters
use-
accommodate several units.
Yeah.
So the fixture would belong to each, it's multi-unit purpose buildings or apartment buildings, where you have one meter responsible for 12, 13 units.
And I would suggest that in a situation like that, if the meter size is not sufficient, like if they're just using a smaller meter, I would still charge per EDU for that many residential units, the base charge, and then only charge them the volumetric rate of what they're actually using, what's going through the meter.
Now, do you see municipalities that keep a consultant on a regular basis to evaluate their water and sewer? We have a similar circumstance, it's probably because of regulation with the electric utility.
Right.
But I don't know if there's any best practice to keep a consultant on, or?
There's probably as many different ways as there are water systems, but most municipalities do have an engineer on retainer, if that's what you're asking.
Which-
But
David
Would
Donovan,
we-
yeah, Josh Taylor,
Yeah.
yeah.
So could we also, would they be able to adequately analyze the funds on an annual basis? The same way Booth and Associates does it for us within the electric utility?
I'd have to ask him, but I would assume so. I mean,
CERCAP can do that too, and our services are free.
Okay.
I'm not trying to cut money out of things going to Cordell, but our job is to save the town money, and that's something that we can help you, or, help train your, Navin can do that probably, so.
but I will tell you one thing, and a lot of people don't understand on the wastewater side. Most manhole has 2 round holes into them. There is a East Jordan Ironworks, which is where we buy a lot of our manholes from, has done a study on it. So if your street's flooded, just say there's 2 manholes in it. There's 2 manholes on that street. One hole is equal to 50 gallons a minute. So most of them have 2 holes. That's 100 gallons a minute. So if there's 2 manholes that are flooded, that's 200 gallons of additional water that we treat
Per minute.
per minute. So also, a lot of people don't understand, and I'm getting on my rant again a little bit, but I won't keep you too much longer. Downspouts. People do not understand how much water runs off your roof, and they're like, well, we want to get rid of our water, so we're going to tie it into the sewer. So, for the people that are at home that have their downspouts tied into it, also know that they're some of the culprit for this additional water that we're treating that we don't need to be treating.
You don't have dishes in your manholes?
We have Parsons inserts. I mean, I went on a rant the other year and bought, but I mean, how many that we don't know that, that are blacktop over? I mean, I know water can't get through blacktop, but,
Gotcha.
I mean, everything that we've done, I would say we're probably on the better side, probably 90% of all of ours have an insert into them.
Gotcha.
But then you get to one that a contractor's been to and never, their house was backed up, and so they went out there and popped it and took their pick and punched a hole into it and pulled it out. Well, that hole, you're defeating the part.
You got manholes that leaking too, not from the top, from the sides.
Oh, I know. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna get back on the main sewer line runs through the treatment plant, 1935. I mean, the manholes are built out of brick.
A lot of places adopt an ordinance that you can't tie your roof leaders into
And
the sewer.
you find that, you'd have to
I mean, we have found a very large one in the last couple of years, a very large customer. So, I mean, just think of that. I mean, if people are mad because you're gonna have to raise the water and sewer, and then they go out there and look at their roof leaders are tied into the sewer, then,
That's a big no-no.
definitely. And there is some storm drain that is still tied to the sewer for overflow. I'm not, prime example, Pine Street. Pine Street on that street, it's not tied together, but when they put the stormwater in and the sewer in, they built a conflict box. Well, that sewer line's how old, and concrete does deteriorate. So how much gallons is coming from that area? Because there's conflict boxes. I know there's 3 of them on that street.
That kind of thing can be part of your asset management and capital improvement
But-
plan to do camera
Not
work.
to change the subject, but on our stormwater side, we've got A and C done, and that's part of B, so that's the middle part. All right, Jeff?
You're on it.
I mean, that's part of the money we want to fix. I mean, that wouldn't solve a lot of it, but it would help probably alleviate some of the water through the treatment plant.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying as far as the takeaways from this report. And in the short term, what I'm hearing is that we need an ordinance that establishes a reserve fund for the water fund and the sewer fund. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I would suggest establishing that reserve and doing something legislatively to protect it.
And then also determining whether it's the rates that you advise within your report or some rate that gets us on a path forward with the reserve fund for each, the water and the sewer fund, and that's before the end of FY '22. Is that correct?
I would say the timetable would be up to you all, but yeah, the sooner the better, certainly.
Sounds like it's sooner than later.
And then we need to also determine what path forward we want to take as far as meter replacement and begin that dialogue as well. Is there-
If you take nothing else away from this, meter replacement is essential, and then I would suggest a water audit and begin thinking about a comprehensive asset management plan.
But
So
not
the-
just meter replacement, but new meter install for everything new that's coming, so that they get off the bat, they're charged from
Yes.
the first drop of water.
Turnkey, Jamie, the latest price for, if somebody came in, not only cost to replace all meters, but also a timetable, what, start to finish, a year?
Yeah.
But in order to get the infrastructure needed to start new developments on that replacement plan, or to go in with the new meters, that we could probably do and then
Now,
start moving in.
you got to be able to read the meter.
That's what I'm saying. So you would have even if the lead time was longer for the meters
Yes,
themselves. you
we could
could
probably
put
get our
the
meters
infrastructure-
and make some of it work. I mean, that would, we'd have to go through the meter company on that. I mean, I'm not there's so much technology, they might be able to read it for us and be able to like hand deliver it now. Yes, it would cost us some time putting it in manually, but we could make some things work, if I'm not mistaken, like make the system work a little bit sooner.
We can evaluate it.
Yeah, but I mean, it would, I would love to see us hire it out, because then that way we could come in. Yes, a lot of the town's water and sewer, or let me rephrase that. the water meters in the older part of town, when the town agreed to put the meters in, are hard piped. So I'm venturing to say we would have some additional, if not quite a few water leaks. Because you're gonna have to spread them a little bit so you get the meter gaskets in, and when you start messing with stuff that's 1940, they do tendency to break and start leaking.
So then, we discussed some of the short-term items. I want to make sure I understand some of the longer-term things. And what we're talking about is once we get an expenditure that we all agree on as far as a capital item, and the meters replaced, that we need to look at the rate structures themselves for
Yes.
water and sewer,
Yeah.
and then implement a water audit and some annual reviews.
If you want to tier your rates, I would suggest tiering the volumetric charge, not the base charge.
But the advisable approach is to bill for actual gallons used.
Yeah.
All right. Am I missing anything that's crucial?
I don't think so. The big one was the unaccounted for water.
Yeah.
And I will say, not to cut you off, Natalie's department has worked continuously and hard onto it. I'm here to give them credit, because they're not here, but those ladies have done an excellent and phenomenal job. But, we replace it, but you can't only do with the parts you have, and, the world's in such a rough place in a way, we're doing the best we can.
It was pretty cool to see all as soon as one of your folks would come in, they'd have another stack of meters for them, we'd go out and replace.
Yes, and they have a book right now, they're keeping a list right now, so, but I can't tell you when we'll see the meters. I'm honestly, I'm appalled the way everything is gone.
We'll get through it. We always do.
Yeah, that's all we can do is hold our head up and keep on going.
Any further questions for Gene or Jamie?
Yeah, I do,
Go
actually,
ahead.
just real quick. So I'm just curious, and that don't anyone read too much into this. You had said, Gene, that our EDU is too low. What do you think it should be?
For wastewater, let's see, I can tell you in a second. And again, this is based on old figures, et cetera, so that's not necessarily what it needs to be. I think I brought the sewer with me, I don't think I just brought water. I thought I had it, but I don't believe I do. Right now, what's the base rate? Oh, there it is, there it is. I'll tell you in a second. I got everything but that. Can I answer that? Can I get that to you by email? Because I don't want to give you a wrong information.
And if you don't mind, then what we'll do is.
It's in my work papers in my laptop, and I don't, I didn't print it out.
Can you email that figure to the town administrator, and then he'll send it to all of us, and we'll also include it in the minute?
And again, just bear in mind that that's a starting point, because it's going to depend on what your costs are, when you have a better.
It's roughly 12 for sewer and 4 for water.
That's what we have right
Yeah.
now.
It's total $16,686 to the penny, I can tell you that.
Okay.
I
Well, I knew it
think,
was 16 something, I just didn't know the breakdown.
I think in here, I did make a suggestion for water as a starting point, but I did not do the same thing for sewer. So I did you a couple of different options. If your customer this is water only, if your customer charge was $10 per EDU, your rate per thousand would be $5.25. If you went up to $20 per EDU, your rate per thousand could be $3.10. Now, again, that's a starting point, not a hard and fast figure. Not something you should adopt tomorrow by any means, and I did not do the same thing for sewer, but I can tell you what I came up with as far as a break-even rate when I get back to my computer.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Is this the comments part, or is this the question part still?
Yeah, I would say that we moved into comments. My apologies, we kind of.
Is anyone going to get beat up or what?
So no, I think, let's go to, thank you, Jack. Agenda item number 2, comments from the council, and we can start with Councilmember Wars.
Okay, cool. Well, first, thank you both for being here. This was very informative for me, still kind of learning this as we go along. Really, my only comment is, it's, to me, and what I'm hearing, it's might be fairly obvious, this is a multi-pronged approach to a situation that's been going on for decades, it sounds like. So, but I think, and I understand and appreciate the urgency that you've presented here tonight, but I think the first thing, hopefully we can use ARPA after we talk about capital, are these meters. And I understand they won't solve everything, but it sounds like to me, if I understand, that's going to get us to where we need to be in conjunction with the audits and looking at rate structure. So this, in my view, this is a multi-pronged, possibly multi-year process. Well, it's going to be a multi-year process.
Yeah, we can't change the sewer and water mains and all that stuff. And
why not? No, I'm just kidding.
you give me the money, I can.
No, I'm just kidding. But thank you both for being here.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate this information.
It took more than a year to get here, so it's probably going to take more than a year to get out of here.
Well, hopefully COVID will be on here soon too. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Vice President Burrow?
All I have is 3 things. What you have made me come to realize is that unless we get a handle on commodity loss, which is water loss, we're just spinning our wheels. And we really need to look at the rate structure to make sure that everyone is being treated equitably across the board. Because you have pointed out that it's just not happening now. And I want to thank Natalie's department for the analysis that they have done in bringing this situation to the front. Who in the world knew that we had that many meters not even registering 1 gallon? That is, I sit here and try to contemplate that loss. And then we look at Jamie and say that your departments are operating at a deficiency when we need to take on that responsibility and give him what he needs to operate. So, Jane, you have woke me up tremendously, and I thank you for it.
That's my job.
Excuse me, I did find the EDU breakdown, if you want that. So it is 16,686, and the water portion is 4,425, sewer portion is 12,261.
But to clarify, we referring to 2 different things.
Okay.
The question was posted on the low EDU referring to the residential per EDU, and the rate is proposed to be attached, not the EDU charge that a developer pays.
Yeah, that's what I would call a
That
connection
number, we
fee.
have that number, but
Yeah.
Okay. I
Gina's going to
misunderstood your
email the
question.
proposed,
Right.
Yeah.
yes.
I still appreciate it either way,
Yeah,
because I
thank
can't
you.
seem to remember that breakdown.
No problem.
Once we decided that we,
Misunderstood.
came to the consensus that now was not the time to bring up the change in rate structure, I kind of didn't put it all in here, so.
Anything else, Councilmember Burrow?
No, but you imagine a meter that is registered by the thousand, and you're not getting a reading until you bust that 1,000. You could just think about 999.
But that's what, also to Gene's point, that's where you're going to see that savings. So what's happening now is the person that uses 999 is being subsidized by somebody else.
Who's
So-
using 1,001 or
Right,
whatever.
exactly
Yeah.
right. So that what you're gonna see hopefully is through that restructuring, the people that are using or conserving water will hopefully save on their bills. So-
And my understanding is the reason you have the present rate structure where you have a tiered minimum bill, if you will, I don't like to call them minimum, but a tiered base charge, is because they could not come up with a uniform rate based on the type of metering you have. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding.
Then if I'm not mistaken, that we ran into that when we did the last one, correct, Natalie?
Yes, because they cannot restructure, because the meters are basically not capable of registering until they click on 1,000.
Right. So that's how you got into this kind of inequitable rate structure. And I don't know when it happened, I know it wasn't that way when the meters were put in.
The slippery slope.
I'm sorry?
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You're full of funnies tonight.
Councilmember Purnell?
I'm just glad to finally see Gene Holloway sitting here. We've been waiting for you forever. I'm so glad the report came out exactly like we thought, and I'm glad we put some pencil on paper together and we can figure out where we need to be to break even.
If only we could turn back the clock.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols?
Thank you. We appreciate your being here. Can't turn back the clock, but, we definitely know where we need to start. Not just the old meters, but these newfangled folks that are moving to towns day one. That's how I'm looking at it. And that excites me because there's a lot of growth. And if you're growing, grow right, grow correctly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nurk?
Gene, excellent presentation. It was a real eye-opener for me, but I am very confident that between the mayor and the council, we can rectify the situation quickly and get back on track. We have the will and the means to do it, so I have full confidence that that will happen.
Just keep us in mind, not whether it's me or someone else. I'm training somebody else to do this kind of work as well, but whether it's me or someone else, CERCAP's always here to help you. A lot of times people don't know we exist. But we are able to do a lot of things on the management and capacity building end. And when I say capacity, I don't mean gallons, I mean management and financial capacity.
And I love how your price fits within our budget.
And yes, and in this case, you get more than what you pay for.
Exactly. Well, Gina probably get mad, but she might not be sitting with us much longer, because if I'm not mistaken, you said you were
I'm
retiring.
looking to retire in June.
Yeah, so,
Congratulations.
Maybe.
we told her she couldn't
Changing.
retire for us.
I was
but-
supposed to retire last December, but it may be.
Can the town hire you at your current rate?
We got a whole office for you.
Town had that chance 25 years ago.
So, I want to echo the thank yous that have come from the dais this evening. Without your help, without Jamie's help, the finance department, this would not be possible. Jack, or Councilmember Orris, to your point, the capital items are what, that discussion is going to help us arrive at the predictions that Gene has made, whether or not that number needs to go up or down, and then how those things will be funded with the ARPA money will stem from those discussions, I think. So,
I'm looking forward to this.
I'm too. So, thank you very much, and I think Councilmember Burrell, Vice President Burrell.
Before we close, I just want to ask I just want to ask to move this forward as soon as possible. What I've heard today, that it needs to be done as soon as possible. I wanted to see some sort of a plan that we have to adhere to the dates. And I'm going to ask Jean to stick with us till we have a solid ground to move forward before she steps down.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think that's,
I think you got that.
that's safe to say.
And as I say, whether it's me or whether it's,
You're not allowed to retire.
You can't
Well,
of 2020.
they're not going to let you leave, Steve.
Well, the good part is, we can go down there and kidnap her because she's right across the street from the place like this. So, I mean, we can go down there and say, hey, we need, she's actually been great to work with on my side. And, Jeff, we've not really said much about Jeff tonight because he sat back, but, if it wasn't for him beating us up over, like, hey, we've all sat down and looked at it. Jeff's had a lot to do with this too, so I kind of felt like he's not really said much tonight because he's let everybody else do it, but, you know, he is behind a lot of it too, so. And Natalie and, you know, everybody in town, you know, the water, wastewater and town hall and all that, you know, they understand, so.
And I'm gonna echo something that Councilmember Burrell said. Put everybody on the spot. The gentleman, the distinguished gentleman in the plaid shirt said that we need to give the tools so that they can get their job done.
Most definitely.
So I'm asking this elected body to please make that happen.
I don't think, I don't think we realize until we go there and find out what all they can do, what the gentlemen and ladies, Megan included, what that crew is able to do. And I only know this, again, I'm not gonna go there, because of my world tour. The time that I spent there and those guys, what they taught me that they could do individually and then collectively, there's a whole lot of, they're capable of doing so much that we haven't given them the tools to properly do to move us forward. There's a lot that they, sorry, I'm yelling, there's a lot that those guys have in there that we're not utilizing properly.
Your staff is probably the main reason that the system's lasted this long.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
absolutely. Absolutely. My first encounter with the water department was an issue with my meter at my home. And I met, y'all remember Jane?
Yes.
I met Jane in a hole, digging as hard as Marvin was. And that was my first encounter with the Berlin Water Department. One was a positive.
Yeah, we had a sinkhole at our house during a blizzard, and they were right out there, everybody.
Well, you know, we can't manipulate Mother Nature. So if you read in our job description, it says pretty much weather, you know, any weather. So, I mean, we fix water mains in a blizzard. We fix sewer mains in a downpour. We fix water mains in so hot that every 15 minutes you've had to take a break. I mean, we've had to take people to home because they got sick from being in the heat so much that in the daytime. So, I mean, you know, I don't want to keep going on because I want to eat. So,
On that note, move to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you everyone for your time this evening.
it'll be in the paper, I'm sure.
You have,
No,
you have an excellent.
food is the big way to motivate somebody.
Did you have to go?
Sorry, John.